Three, two, one.
Here we go!
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Texas Private School Podcast. As always, I'm half of your hosting crew, Wes Tolleson, coming to you from Dallas, Texas, more specifically Sunnyvale. Walker Lott joins me from beautiful, beautiful College Station, Texas, where the water is more pure than anywhere else on the planet. Walker Lott, how are you doing down in C-Stat? Back from an extensive trip in Fort Worth.
Yeah, I went home to see the family and also was prepping for the retreat. And then after the retreat, spent time with the family. We can talk about that in a second. But no, the water is so bad here in College Station. I'm putting that out there. It is so bad. I just had to change because we had to use the Brita and I had to use the Brita. It took us like 5 more minutes to record this because I had to change my water because it was that bad. And, you know, you spend time in DFW and you're like, oh, the water's fantastic. Then you come down to College Station. It's just, maybe that's the private school rant in me, but like, man, that was bad. It's so bad. Anyways, what's up, guys?
There's a lot of things that I love about College Station, but the water is just, it's horrendous.
Oh, yeah.
It is the most disgusting thing on the planet. But this isn't a water clarity podcast. This is a Texas private school podcast. And today we are going to be previewing Division II, probably the most fun division we'll get to preview in terms of raw talent and competition. But before we get into that, I want to do some quick housekeeping and recap our first annual Texas private school quarterback retreat that we had in Fort Worth at APR Ranch about a week ago. No, about a week ago now. This is something that we planned. We'd been planning for months and months and months. The amount of work that went into it was ridiculous. And for it to go off without a hitch was something that I know we're both incredibly proud of. Just what are your thoughts and what do you want to say to the people that came and took time out of their day to come be a part of something that we're building?
No, yeah. Thank you everyone for driving up. We had Gibby from San Antonio drive all the way up here, and Houston, Austin, Midland, West Texas, Lubbock, East Texas. Everyone around the state drove around and came up to this thing, and it was awesome. And so firstly, thank you to the parents and all the kids who drove up. It was awesome. I thought it was a really good time. And I mean, we're not trying to like shout ourselves out more, but I mean, we had guys say like, hey, it was like, you know, I learned more here than I did at most college camps I went to over the summer and got more reps and got actually more instruction and actually had more fun there than most things they've done all summer camps wise. So I'm glad they all had a good time, man. And that's really what mattered. And it was a good time. You know, I got to beat Dante Lewis in pool and it was a good time there. The St. Thomas boys, you know, they're good at football, much better than I was, but they still don't got me in pool. And that's all that matters at the end of the day. But yeah, man, it was a good time. It was awesome. You know, getting to see other guys, you know, some of the guys we haven't met in person before, like Carter Devereaux from Nolan Catholic and you know, guys like that where, you know, we've known the name, but we haven't really seen them in person. So it was a good time to see all these guys. Hopefully some of those 24s come back next year as like, you know, mentors to the young guys. And hey, if you didn't get invited or, you know, you were going to be invited, but, you know, type of thing, you just had a vacation or something like that, you might be there next year. So I'm excited for next year to make it even better than it was this year. But man, a lot of hard work and dedication went into that. And it was awesome, man. It was everything was worth it. And I was telling Wes, like, this was probably the biggest thing I've done in my life, like event wise or something like that. And I couldn't have wanted it to gone any other way. Like it was really, really good for our first one. So, and also we got to announce our own apparel line through these guys. So that was really, really cool. Wes is wearing that. The hat is another thing we're dropping. So, stay tuned for that. But, that should come out pretty soon before the season starts. So be excited for that. That's the next kind of thing we're excited about. So if you like what you saw in the videos and stuff, stay tuned because you might be able to cop one of your own.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just one more thing on the camp. We always say that our biggest purpose outside of providing more coverage for private school athletes is to build a sense of community. And we don't say that in a cheesy, you know, stereotypical way. We genuinely want to build connections between us and the guys and have all the guys be connected to each other. And I think that's a big thing that everyone took away from it, which was one of our main goals. I mean, we had guys that will not get a chance to meet each other throughout the season, whether they're in different cities or different divisions. And we had, guys from West Texas talking to guys from the Metroplex and Houston and vice versa. And that was my favorite part of the camp. Just bringing all the guys together, having everyone not just stick with their own guys from their school and talk to them, but having different players from different schools talk to each other and talk to us and build relationships. I mean, it meant a lot to me. I know it meant a lot to you. And it was such a fulfilling moment. And it's something that we enjoyed so much that we plan on doing again. I think this is something that we're going to try to make bigger and bigger. And at the end of the day, just make it something that everyone that comes to it gets something out of, whether that's, merch that we gave out or whether it's just you getting to talk to other guys. But also with the merch, I'm so incredibly excited. This has been a dream of both of ours we designed our own merch. It's hard for me to turn around and show you, but the back of it's really cool. Walker, the quarterback retreat shirts you designed are one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. I wear it to work out like at least once or twice a week. But I mean, we will be dropping merchandise at the beginning of the season and most likely towards the end of the season. So if you are wanting a way to support us, that is a huge way to do it. Not only are you it's not also that you're just giving money with nothing in return, you're getting some nice apparel out of it too. So if you want a way to support us, that's a huge way to do it. We would be incredibly thankful if you would go browse and purchase some of our merchandise and wear it around and support not just us, but private school athletics in general.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that quickly and say, we like saying merch, but we didn't really want to make it podcast merch because that's kind of at the same time it's not as cool for y'all.
Yeah, it's cheesy.
Right. And so it's an apparel line that we are starting, and this is the first drop of hopefully many more drops down the road of actually cool stuff that you see rest one in the background. That's the Just Watch logo on the back of it. So stuff like that is what we try to do it because we've been there. We know what it is. There you go. Like that's the back. And our saying is kind of just watch. That is our saying. And it defines kind of that chip on the shoulder type of thing where it's a double entendre for us. We're a media company that we want you to, of course, just watch us and, collaborate with us. But at the same time, when you're an athlete, you might kind of not be as like, respected, and we want you to have that chip on your shoulder to be like, you don't believe in me, I just watch. And that's kind of the double entendre for this, and we're really excited for this. And so that will be kind of a saying for our media company where we promote y'all and all of that, but we also want you to have that kind of chip on the shoulder attitude sometimes and have that just watch attitude. So that's going to be something we have throughout the time. And I want to give a quick shout out to High Point Signs and Apparel for helping us out with the retreat, with all the shirts for that. They was fully funded by them. So thank you so much for that. And also they will be the guys that will be helping us with the apparel lines down the line. And we couldn't be more thankful for that. So firstly, thank you to them for helping us out with that. The guy who owns is a father of a couple guys at Brazos Christian here in Bryan and College Station area. So he loves the private school, landscape, and so he's a really good guy, so we appreciate him coming out. And I wanted to make that quick shout out.
Absolutely. And now y'all, what we've been talking about over the past couple months when we've been saying, okay, like there hasn't been a whole lot of on-screen content, but best believe we're putting a ton of work in behind the scenes. The quarterback retreat and the merchandise have been big parts of that. But this is something. Go on.
No, continue. I want to make one last point after you finish.
All right. But it's just there are tons of work that we are putting in on all different fronts to try and make our coverage as high quality as possible, because I mean, just straight up, we love doing it. That's the bottom line. We love getting y'all coverage, and it means a whole lot to us. Walker.
Yeah. I want, sometimes, people, when we're doing this company, we forget like it's right now, it's just, us two, like this is what we're doing it. We have Ryan sometimes behind the scenes helping us out, but he's still focusing on his job at OSU and his internship with Team USA. So that's really what a lot of his main focus is. But it's a lot of times me and Wes trying to figure out everything, and it's a really good time. So one thing we're really looking forward to is while we're doing housekeeping, we're looking for interns. So if you are in high school and you want to have sports journalism, experience before you get to the college level, please reach out to us. Our email will be down below. Our social medias are always tagged right here on the screen. So please reach out to us. We're looking for kind of high school kids that want to do cover games for us, write articles, do interviews, stuff like that. Where if you're interested or know someone who's interested, please tell them to reach out to us at txprivateschoolpodcast@gmail.com or the socials on our screen. That's kind of the next step, is we're trying to build a community even on that side of sports journalism to give all of y'all more and more coverage. So if you have anyone that would love to be an intern or help us out, please reach out to us. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I will say to that, and I promise this is the last point before we get into the actual preview. As somebody who is currently going through job searching and things like that, in terms of your resume, there is no substitute for industry experience. And to break that down even further, yes, your GPA is incredibly important. Don't slack off on grades, but your people, whenever you're applying for jobs in sports journalism or broadcasting or stuff like that, people are going to ask you, okay, so what's your prior work experience? And if you're wanting to get that before you get into college, I guarantee you there's no better opportunity than this. So we help y'all, you help us. I think it'd be a great relationship. And yeah, just come be a part of something special and something in your own community and help build it up. I think it would be a great time for everyone involved. But all that being said, housekeeping out of the way, Walker, I think it's time to preview some TAPS Division II teams, and what better district to start with than the District of Doom, District 1. This was far and away the best district last year. As much as I want to joke it was District 2, it was not by a lot. But yeah, I mean, District 1 composed of Argyle Liberty Christian, Fort Worth All Saints, Midland Christian, Fort Worth Christian, and Southwest Christian. It's gonna be an interesting time for sure. Do you want to? I say that we unveil like we did for Division 1. We unveil our rankings for the district first, and then go forward with that.
I like the idea, sir.
Absolutely. So, without further ado, our preseason rankings for TAPS Division 2 District 1. We have Argyle Liberty Christian at first, Fort Worth All Saints at second, Midland Christian third, Fort Worth Christian fourth, and Fort Worth Southwest Christian fifth. So it's interesting. I think the hardest decision for us was who goes number one, because Argyle Liberty and Fort Worth All Saints are engaged, in the spirit of the Oppenheimer movie. They're engaged in a bit of an arms race. They're both, building nuclear weapons in the form of just elite, talented athletes. I don't know who's the U.S. and who are the Soviets in this analogy, but long story short, both teams have more talent that I've seen combined on private school rosters. Walker, we decided to go with Liberty first, in a very, very narrow margin, by the way. For the sake of
1A, 1B type of thing. 1A, 1B type of thing.
Yeah, we talked for a good 15 minutes before this just on who goes number one in this district. So, Walker, we made the decision to go with Liberty first. What are your thoughts on the team and the thoughts on us keeping Liberty first?
I think it was, we kind of looked at honestly, position by position, and kind of like tried to balance it out and see, all right, what matters more at some things. And we really like the offensive side of the ball for Argyle a lot. And whether it is Cole Welliver or Hogan Nelson at the quarterback spot, they have some of the best receiving core. And they're going to be a graphic that I was already thinking about doing, Wes, of what is the greatest receiving core in all of Texas private school football right now. And you can make a great argument for Argyle Liberty to have that number one spot with Michael Stump, Brady Janusek, and Quentin Brown. Those three guys are going to be a deadly trio of weapons where they each bring something different to the table. And it's a recipe for success with anyone throwing the football. And I'm just so excited to watch them. And then you bring in Chase Garnett, right? That's his name, from Keller Central to be that running back spot. And I don't know how, you could have a 3,000 yard passer with Hogan or Cole, and you might have multiple 1,000-yard receivers on this receiving core, and it's going to be very, very impressive for these guys this year, and I'm excited for that. And I think But then on the other side, of course, you have Keldon Ryan, and you have Dougie Doddard and Thomas Wright, and guys like that. I mean, you're gonna be like, well, I don't know how you do that with Breed Watkins, who I think is gonna be an absolute stud this year, is gonna be a game changer. I mean, how do you do that? And then you get in those debates. Like this would like back in elementary school, looking at the lunch table type of debate for like pro teams. This would be such a good one to have between these two teams. And we'll get down the line, but there's a reason these teams have been kind of known as the top two teams in all of TAPS D2. And so this is going to be a battle to really see who comes out of the North. And it's going to be really, really fun. And I'm really excited for their battles over the year. And I mean, I don't know what I'll be doing whenever they play, but I know I will be there no matter what. And I'm excited for that. And I supposedly I think it's at All Saints this year. And I want to say, I was talking to some of the guys from the Fort Worth area of the retreat, and they're like, a lot of Fort Worth schools are just coming by to just go watch that game because it's that good of a game this year. So I'm really, really excited to watch them play. I mean, I think defensively, man, I mean, defensive line that for both sides, Keller Patterson, Darius Quilcott off the edge, more of a linebacker edge rusher type of thing. And then other guys. And then, but the linebackers of CJ Witten and the other kid that came from Keller Central and, then on the defensive line, Max Saul, both defenses are going to be so, so good. And of course you have Kevin Doddard of the DB spot. And then Brady Janusik on the other side. And then you're like, oh, I want a good player. No, you get a good player. And it's like a Oprah Winfrey and that mean everyone gets a good player. This game is going to be so much fun to watch. And it's just it's a 1A, 1B type of thing. And I think the cohesiveness of maybe the Argyle team, I think is maybe going to set over an edge. And, last year, Fort Worth All Saints kind of struggled when they had a couple pieces move in and trying to gel. And then they finally had success as the season went on. And I would love to know, Wes, if you could look this up for me, when do they play earlier in district or they play later in district? Because if it's a little bit later, that could help All Saints like they did the past couple years. Or is this going to be a type of thing where it's going to take longer for them and that might hurt them like last year? So I'm intrigued by this team. I think both teams are going to be really, really good. Battle of elite quarterback matchups and elite players. So I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more about this game and these matchups because these are the top two teams in private school and especially D2. So, I mean, I'm really, really excited for this matchup, man. It's going to be the battle of the Titans in TAPS Division 2.
Absolutely. To answer your question, it's the second to last game in district. Friday, October the 27th, Liberty goes to All Saints. And I know we're going to have a great opportunity this season for us to be in two different places every week and getting a lot of games covered. Not that week. I will also be at that game regardless.
Yeah.
Unless somehow, and it wouldn't even make sense, Grace Brookhill played just for nostalgia reasons, and that's going to be a non-district game, so there's no chance. But I will absolutely that I think will end up being the biggest private school football game I've ever covered, maybe outside of Regents Fort Bend last year in the playoffs, because that by far has been the greatest up to this point. Also, I am very intrigued by and I'm gonna say this like I'm digging up a prospect out of the dirt. It's Jason Witten's son, so I can't really be like, oh, here's this underrated unknown guy. It's the son of one of the greatest tight ends in the history of football. But Cooper Witten, class of 27 athlete. I was talking to guys recently, and they're like, you need to keep an eye on Cooper. Like, I know he's only going to be a freshman, but he's freaky athletic. And he has a chance to make a big impact day one for a loaded Liberty team. So I'm very interested to see how that goes. I'm very, very impressed with Liberty's offensive line as well, with Keithan Smith, with Nate Humphreys, with all those guys. I think they're going to give Chase Garnett a great lane, who's a great running back by himself, but running behind that line, I think it's going to be really good. My opinion as to put Liberty over All Saints is I think we've seen a lot more of the guys on Liberty in this district already. Almost all these guys we're talking about outside of, Cole Welliver, obviously, played in this district last year and have gone through things together. Whereas All Saints is bringing a lot more guys in from different places who are fantastic athletes. I'm just going to need to see a couple weeks of them playing together before I'm like, okay, these guys could be the best team. But like we've said already, it's 1A, 1B. It's a coin flip who's better, really. And regardless, it's going to be incredibly interesting. I will be very interested to see who wins the Cold War arms race between Liberty and All Saints. Now, the question I have to raise, and also I didn't mention this off the top, but there are so many teams in D2, and we're not going to be here for 4 hours, so we're not going to go and preview every roster in depth. We're more just going to rank the districts, and then we're going to talk about storylines. So another storyline I want to get into is how big is the gap between the top two of Liberty and All Saints and everyone else? Keep in mind that it's Liberty, All Saints at the top, and then behind them is Midland Christian, who finished above All Saints in district last year, by the way,
Right.
and then Fort Worth Christian and Southwest Christian. I am of the opinion that the gap is massive, and we could be wrong. We always seem to underrate Midland. Burner accounts tend to remind us of that in season, but first of all, I have a tremendous respect for Midland. I love the culture. I love the athletic department. They flew us out to a basketball game, for crying out loud. Also, Midland, if you would like to fly us out or have us travel to a football game, I want to go watch a football game in West Texas. I got the chance to last year at Lubbock Trinity. If I got to at Midland, I would be over the moon. But that all being said, I'm sure Midland will be good, but Walker, how big is that gap between the 2 spot and everyone else in D1?
Oh, I mean, I agree. I think it's massive. I don't think it's particularly close. I think, I mean, we said last year with Fort Worth Christian that Fort Worth Christian's anytime for them to win had it have been last year, and it did happen, almost got there. They almost went to the state game, and it was close, but I think they lose so much of a talented senior class, have a couple transfers out, especially Hogan and Nate Humphrey. That's huge for them. And it's going to be interesting to see how Fort Worth Christian deals with all of that, bringing Luke Dodd, and that's a really good player. Tucker Ashford and Bryce Valley are going to be good. The Midland Christian loses a good senior class too. Have a couple transfers out. They have to figure out their quarterback, which I think Colton Newsom is going to do a great job at that. But Boston Rodriguez on the other side is a good player. And I think this new transfer of running back for Midland High, Briley Perez, is going to be a good player, really good player for them. But in SES, I think they have to figure out their quarterback spot. But I really like, of course, Stegall, Maddox, Carroll, Bryce Anderson. And I really, really like DJ Beasley, the 2026 athlete who just got his Division I offer. So I think those guys are going to lead the team, and it's going to be really, really excited. I think Wyatt Averhoff is going to be the guy at the quarterback position this year, but it's going to be a first-year head coach over there for SES, Jeff Dirksen, and it's going to be interesting to see how he does. A lot of them are going through a lot of changes, and it's going to be interesting to see how they balance each other. But I think 3rd through 5th is really going to be a coin flip. And remember last year for that division or for that district, the top 4 go. So one of those 3 teams are not going to make the playoffs, and SES had the bad luck of last year not making it. Does SES make it? Do other 2 teams make it? Does SES, do they change their entire offensive scheme or defensive scheme under a new head coach? SES or Fort Worth Christian, how do they handle a lot of transfers and a lot of graduating seniors? And Midland Christian, they lose their quarterback. They graduate a big senior class. How do they deal with that transition? So a lot of them are going to be dealing with a lot of different transitioning into the next cycles of their teams. But to answer your question, I think it's a very, very big drop off, and it's going to be interesting to see how those teams battle it out with each other.
I agree. And that actually, your commentary on let the top 4 go, it segues very nicely into my last storyline for District 1 is, can Midland outgrit the Metroplex schools? Now, I'm throwing out Liberty and All Saints here. Like, they could beat them, but very most likely Liberty and All Saints are way too good on paper to lose to anyone else in this district. Right. Can Midland Christian outgrit Fort Worth Christian, Southwest Christian, and solidify 3rd place in that district?
I think they can. I'm really excited to see this Briley Perez kid, and I think he might step them because he might take him over the edge in those games. And I love Colton Newsom, that he's going to be a dual threat guy for them, of course. And can you look up and see what games are at Midland this year? Because I know Argyle's at Midland, so that's going to be interesting to see. because Argyle, those guys, they have never made that drive out there. So that's going
And
to be
we
very interesting.
forget our point on bus fatigue and how much of a role that
Right.
plays. I will one day run a regression to figure out how much each hour of bus fatigue affects a point in a game. I will get it done at some point.
And I want to say also, talking about Midland, they only have 3 home games this year. Only 3. Yeah, because
In district or
in overall. And yeah, because it's just how their schedule ended up. They only play 9 games. I think they're missing a week 1 game still, and they start out with Regents at home. But you can look that up for me and tell me if I'm wrong.
dude, their first 4 games are away. Pleasant Grove neutral, then Eden, then Del Rio, and then Cornerstone. Oh my gosh, dude, that's criminal. In district, yeah.
No, can keep going. What's district look like
Yeah,
for them?
and then in district, they play All Saints in Fort Worth, Liberty in Midland, Fort Worth Christian at Fort Worth Christian, and then SCS at home. That is criminal for a program whose one of their biggest advantages is their location, making teams come to them. That is tough.
Yeah. And do they play Regents? They play Regents at home their first game, right? And then they go 4 on the road. Is that how it is?
Oh yes, I missed the first game. Yes,
Okay.
it's Regents. It's Regents in dude. That'll be
No,
nasty. That'll be a fun game.
that's a really good game. If hey, fly us out for that or Liberty or SCS, one of those. Come on, man. We're asking for it. Anyways, down the line. They know. It's we've pleaded. Anyways, yeah, I think Midland has that advantage of the Liberty and SES games, that being at home is going to be a huge for them. And traveling to Fort Worth Christian, which is definitely not the farthest one they would have to do. So I think they could definitely outgrit them. They always have. That's something that West Texas grit, West Texas toughness, they always just have, man. So I think Midland solidifies that 3rd spot pretty easily. So
I think so. And the last thing I'll ask is Fort Worth Christian versus SCS 4 and 5. We had some discussion regarding who should obtain the dweller spot. Hearing people talk at Fort Worth Christian. A lot of people are down on the team this year, and I'm saying that a lot of people from Fort Worth Christian are down regarding just with how much you lose. I mean, they lose a ton of talent, but we're still having them at 4th. And Southwest Christian at 5th. Walker, I don't think there's a huge gap there. I think 4 and 5 are pretty interchangeable. But before we get out of District 1, what are your thoughts on 4 and 5? Because it's a big deal, because 5 misses the playoff and 4 goes.
yeah, I think that battle in 4th is going to be a really fun matchup, and it's going to be interesting to see how the teams gel by the point of the season when they have to play, because it's always a good game. They've played each other for years now, probably a decade plus of them fighting it out against each other. And those teams know each other very, very well in every single sport. So that is one of the only rivalries that has stayed in that district. And so it's going to be a good one. And it being, I don't know where the season, I don't know, yeah, it being at SCS, and I love SCS's environment usually, so it being at SCS is, I think, is gonna maybe have that advantage to SCS's favor. And I wonder how teams are gonna face with DJ Beasley and JR Stegall on the defensive line. Those 2 guys are gonna cause havoc most games they play. So I don't think most offensive lines in that district are going to hold up against those 2 dudes. So as long as they get theirs, and I think that will help SES's chances. But I think Luke Dodd is probably the 3rd best quarterback in that district. So yeah, I think he's going to help out with that team. So it's going to be a balance of how do they help each other. So
I agree. We are hearing some rumblings about possible imports into, I say it like it's a crate of sugar or tea or something, possible transfers into Fort Worth Christian. And if what I'm hearing does happen, yeah, absolutely they stay at 4, but it'll be interesting. I am very excited to see how D1 or District 1 plays out. As we've said before, and I just want to, for Walker, for your sake, I will mention this because I know you probably won't. It is criminal what happened to teams like SCS and Fort Worth Christian with all the D1 teams moving down to D2. If all of those teams moved in to District 2 and I had to watch Grace play Liberty and All Saints in Midland every week, I'd probably tear my hair out. But, that's just the way the chips fell.
And I will say, like this, we had our great years at SES when they were not there, luckily. So like the years where we had the most talented rosters were the years they were not there, but we had to run into DC. Now DC is gone. So if it was just 2 more years later of them coming down and then DC could have went down, like it almost worked out in our favor, but you can't get everything right for you. So
Yeah, I mean, now you know how I feel because we had to play DC in district every week. So it's you're trading Goliath for another Goliath at the end of the day.
yeah.
But that being said, those are our thoughts on TAPS Division II District 1. We will now transition into the Teddy Bear District, District 2. And that pains me to say because my beloved Grace community makes up this district. And it's just, we were talking about this pre-show, and I'm not hating on any teams in this district, but it is such a sharp drop-off from District 1. I think there's, in this district, I think there's going to be a ton of competition. We will get into, can any of these teams beat any of the teams from District 1 in the playoffs, but there's just a stark talent differential. But before we go any further, let us unveil the TXPS Division 1 District 2 preseason power rankings, starting at number 1. The Grace community from Tyler Cougars, we have them at number 1. Number 2, we have Legacy Christian out of Frisco. Number 3, we have Grapevine Faith. Number 4 is Bishop Dunn. And number 5 is Coram Deo. So those are our power rankings for Division 2, District 2. Walker, we spent some time here. This is a really interesting district to rank. I think you take Coram Deo out of the equation and you put Grace, Legacy, Faith, and Dunn up there and put them on a dartboard and just blindfold yourself and throw a dart. You could probably make a case for any of those teams being number 1.
Yeah.
We mentioned there's no outside of Clayton Sebecki at Grapevine Faith, who is far and away the best athlete in this district. There's no one that really stands out as a guy that you look at and you're like, holy crap, that guy's good. There's a lot of solid players. There's a lot of tier 2, really good high school football players. But in terms of like Division 1 prospects, it's Sebecki and then just kind of no one else. But in terms of our overall rankings, Walker, you want to give a little more insight as to why we thought the way that we did?
Yeah, I think a lot of them is who's coming back and roster. What is I forget the term.
Turnover?
Roster turnover. Is that the term I'm looking for? Where Grace and Legacy really didn't have a lot this year, and they lost a lot of. They've lost, of course, a senior class, but not a huge one. Grace loses Simeon Gardner, which that's huge for y'all, but them and Legacy really have a lot of guys returning this year. And I know you'll talk about more Grace later a little bit, but Grapevine Faith loses a big senior class led by a 3-year starter in Chase Cross and, guys like that. And I want to see who else did they lose? Parker Barley, Jaden Norris, Grady Norman, Campbell Stites. They lost a big senior class. And then they had John Raybuck transfer out. And a couple other guys transfer out, and you kind of are left with guys who are not bad, but that much turnover with also a new head coach. How are you supposed to kind of be like, all right, that can be a team that can fight for the district title all of a sudden? So I think it's gonna be interesting to see. We put Grapevine Faith 3 because the head coach looks like he has a really good pedigree, and you can't ever really count out Grapevine Faith for the culture they've set there for over the years. But Bishop Dunn is also a team that could really fight for any of these spots too. This Bishop Dunn is going to be an interesting squad because you really don't know much about them, and not much about them, but like they're always going to be a dogfight in most games they play. And so they might lose a couple, they might win a couple. So this game, like you said, it could be just a dartboard, and these 5 could be switched up anywhere. So it's going to be interesting to see this year. But I think just roster turnover played a big part in this season for us.
Absolutely. That's Carson. That's Chase Cross, the younger brother of Carson Cross, correct?
Yes.
Dude, I'm so old. I remember doing a podcast previewing a game with his brother that like 4 years ago, and that I don't like how old that makes me feel. But yeah, I will speak on our rationale to put Grace number 1 to try to make this not seem like a homer pick at all, because I've been down on Grace when they're down. I admit that, but I will say I think Grace out of all the teams brings the most back. That's not to say they lose very good players in Jamarion Johnson, Caden Lynch, Nick Stewart, Caleb Wilson, Reed Alexander, Cole Crawford. It's an extensive list, but they're bringing guys back like Dylan Taylor, JT Williams, Blake Harmon, Grant Turner. I think Dylan Taylor and Blake Harmon are going to be the best linebacking crew in that district. And I think that's the most important piece of your defense. And I think that's going to be huge for Grace. I think Dylan Taylor and Blake Harmon are two of the most underrated linebackers in the state just because they're hidden away in East Texas. They're also bringing in a kid at quarterback named Zach Davis that I had the opportunity to be around and help train a year ago. They're going to move JT Williams into the slot or running back, I think. And then Zach Davis, more on him. He's a very talented player. He's a young kid. He's going to be a sophomore, but I think he's going to be very good. And then also Grant Turner, GT, 5'9", 175, a little scuttlebug, but he's electric with the ball in his hands. You turn on his tape, and you get the kid the ball, and the kid finds the end zone. It's incredibly fun to watch. But that being said, with Tim Russell there, with Coach Maddox, a guy that knows Grace better than anybody in the state, being back as the offensive coordinator, I really do think that Grace has a really good chance. And honestly, if I'm being real, no excuse not to win this district. If Grace doesn't win this district this year, it's going to raise some serious questions because everyone else is so down. We will see though. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to, if Grace gets about 3 district games in and goes 3-0, you're going to see me completely unglued and say Grace is going to go to the semis and the playoffs. It's going to be a fun time. But that being said, that's kind of our rationale on the rankings. I think we've spoken at length on the teams that comprise District 2. So let's get into some storylines. And Walker, I'm going to bring up the most glaring one. Can anyone in this district hold a candle to District 1? They went 0-4 in the playoffs last year against District 1. Faith kept it relatively close with All Saints, and Dunn barely lost to Fort Worth Christian.
True.
But you do have to remember that. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at talent on paper, it seems like it's not close. Do you think there's anyone in this district? Do you think the best team in this district can beat the worst team in this district in the playoffs?
I think with a Fort Worth Christian or SES has to be that 4th spot. They're gonna have to play them. So yeah, maybe I could say maybe one of them beating them, but if you ask me, will they? I have to say an answer. Probably not. No. I think there's not a lot of Division I talent in that district, which is so crazy to say. Because I mean, of course, Clayton Sebecki is one of them, but there's not another guy that with Juan Million Aguilar leaving Bishop Dunn, with Simeon Garner leaving Grace. Those guys leaving, they lose a lot of the Division I elite talent they have in that district. So it's a lot of good football players, which is never a bad thing. We're just saying there's not a league guy that could maybe run the district like maybe in years past. So I think I just no, I really don't think so.
I agree. And that's not a knock at any of those teams. In 5 or 6 years ago, a lot of these teams would be considered like very good teams in private school. It's just the landscape has changed so dramatically in the last half decade that it's hard to recognize the sport. And that's not a good or a bad thing. It's just change. But you kind of have to adapt with the times. We will see. I do think District 2 is going to be incredibly fun to watch. It's just, can any of those teams make any noise in the playoffs? On paper, probably not. But yeah, and then we talked a lot to the massive shakeup, the Faith transfers, the Grace skill position turnover. It's very interesting. Also, I want to talk. We have 2 first-year coaches in the district. We have Doug Hicks at Legacy and Bobby Holland, the Highland Park incomer at Faith. I think, and both of those teams are teams that we think could potentially win the district if the chips fall the way that those teams hope. What are your thoughts on both of those guys coming in at their respective schools and what that means for both Legacy and Faith?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see. I think, I don't know much about Doug Hicks, but the Bobby Holland Highland Park connection. I mean, Highland Park is one of the best respected Texas high school football programs ever. So having him to come over is going to be huge for them. And I think having that pedigree is going to be well respected over there. And, especially with especially high school kids, because I don't know if you ever had any head coaching turnover when you were playing, but like respect is a lot in any locker room, right? Like having the respect of your like you respect your coaches is probably the number one valuable thing you have. And so having a pedigree like that is going to be huge for him, especially at a place like Faith. So I think that's going to be a huge win for Grapevine Faith is the hire of him.
I definitely think so. I think that's big for them. Legacy, I'm interested in because there was a lot with Coach Trotter and everyone else coming in. There was a lot of noise. And it seemed like Legacy was going to try and take a hard pivot in a new direction, and then it honestly just flamed out and it just fell apart. And in 1 year, that entire staff is more or less gone, and they're bringing in new guys. So I hope for Legacy's sake that Doug Hicks is a long haul hire. I hope that he gels really well with the team. They win games this year, because I would like to see Legacy, because I remember back when I was helping coach at Grace when I was a sophomore in high school, Grace or sophomore in college. Grace played Legacy like week 1, and it was like a top 10 matchup in the state. It was I really do hope that Legacy gets back to the way that they were, and I think hiring Doug Hicks is a step in the right direction.
One second, I want to add on, and they, unlike other schools, they should be getting a lot of transfers in, being real. Like with how the world is nowadays, Frisco is a monumental area. Plano, North Dallas, all that area is a monumental area for the transfer portal. Like you should be able to get a lot of kids from Frisco High who in the Frisco ISD district maybe not are playing as well and want to transfer over. That should be something you should really key asset on. So I hate that I'm vouching for transfers, but like you just kind of have to, especially in Division 2. You kind of have to vouch for it. And so hopefully Doug Hicks kind of makes that a priority.
Absolutely. But the last point I want to bring up in District 2 is regarding Bishop Dunn. Whenever I watched their spring game, I noticed two things. The first being the skill positions are really good. In between Quincy Reams at quarterback, Bradley Mays at receiver, Kyle Millett at linebacker, Josiah Rome at running back, or Vaughn Robinson at cornerback. They've got a lot of very flashy skill talent. The problem, Paul Geary as well at linebacker. The problem is the offensive and defensive fronts, quite frankly, are really bad. There were very few snaps I saw that Quincy wasn't scrambling, and because the pocket broke down really quickly. I think Dunn's skill players rival anyone else in the district. I think their lines are far and away the worst in the district. For Dunn to be competitive and for them to take a step in a position to potentially win that district, they're going to have to figure the things out on the offensive and defensive line. Walker, I mean, you're a former offensive lineman. Just how important do you think it is with the skill players they have that they figure things out on the offensive and defensive fronts?
Oh, 100%. Talking offensively for a second, like it is going to be so crucial to be able to protect Quincy and let him throw to his other guys. Like that is going to be huge. Like in high school, like you don't have to have a 6'5" all offensive line and dominate and have that. You don't need that in the high school level. You just need guys who are be able to do their job, be able to pull and protect their quarterback. And with some of the better offensive linemen, sometimes are the 5'10" guys at center and just being really good. So at that time, that's all that really matters. And hopefully, especially at the private school level, you should be able to find a pretty good offensive line. Not everyone has to have Parrish where, they're just different from themselves, but I mean, offensive line is crucial in any game. As everyone always says, the game is one of the trenches. And so if your defensive line can disrupt the offense and not let their running game going and not let the quarterback be comfortable, that's huge as well. So I think having not the greatest of offensive defensive lines for Bishop Dunn is going to hurt them and hurt them a little bit as the season progresses.
I think so for sure. I'm going to be watching closely if Dunn gets anyone in before the season starts, and it's going to be very fun to watch. But like I said before we move on to District 3, I don't think I hope that District 2 can field some teams that can potentially play with some of the teams in D1 or District 1. I don't anticipate it happening, but I'm very excited to watch the competition within District 2 because I think it's going to be a fun district. I don't think there's a clear horse that's going to win this race, and I think the competition within the district is going to be a fun time. That being said, we will now transition down a little farther south into District 3 around the Austin, San Antonio area. This is going to be a fun one as well. And before anything else, let's just go ahead and say our power ranking. So for TAPS Division 2 District 3, the way that TXPS has the preseason power rankings, number 1, who else? Austin Regents. Number 2, we have Austin Hyde Park. Number 3, we have Brownsville St. Joseph. Number 4, we have St. Michael's Christian. Number 5, we have TMI Episcopal. Number 6, we have St. Joseph Victoria. Number 7, we have San Antonio Christian School. And number 8, we have St. Anthony's. So, Walker, I think more or less the rankings make sense. I don't know how you're going to argue that anyone besides Regents gets that top spot. And Hyde Park, I think they've opened a lot of people's eyes as to how far they have progressed in the past couple of years, especially last year. And then St. Joseph, I think that rounds out a very clear top 3, a team that played very, very well, of a incredible receiving core and offense. But in terms of the way that we have D3 structured, what are your thoughts on it? And more or less, why did we do the things that we did?
Yeah, we definitely are not doing the mistake we did last year of not putting Regis in the top spot. Just had to bring that back. It's funny. But yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting to see some of these teams and how they change. We have a lot of differences in a lot of these teams, especially with St. Michael's TMI. You lose one of the Gardner brothers, he graduates, goes to Colorado State. You lose Grayson Dono at quarterback. St. Michael's loses probably one of the most talented senior classes they've had in a while. They lose Jason Stokes, Nehemiah Griffin, a couple others. Bo Ogden stakes to just basketball. So how do they develop, and how is that team going to look next year? And that's going to be interesting to see. Brownsville St. Joseph, they lose their quarterback. He graduates, goes to play college ball. And who else do they have that can be something else? Like who else do they have and who's going to be standing out? Hyde Park, it's going to be interesting to see. New quarterback coming in who at the 7-on-7 tournament, man, he looked pretty good. And having a guy like Carter Brawl throw to him, it's going to be very, very good for them. And Regents, I mean, how big of a leap does the Michigan offered Quinn Murphy take in his second season? So I think there's a lot of storylines in this district, but I think we got it right in the rankings for sure.
Yeah, I think we did. Then again, we were going to say that regardless of the rankings we make. I don't know if we're ever going to come out and say, nope, I think these rankings are going to be completely wrong by week 3. But inevitably, that's more or less what happens. But yeah, I think that's a big storyline, is how big of a step does Quinn Murphy take in year 2? Obviously, as a freshman, I mean, he blew the doors off of District 3. And I think I mentioned it in our 7-on-7 recap, but the kid grew like a weed between November and June, because like I said, I remember talking to him in November and interviewing him. You can go back and look at the interview. I'm like, more or less like either looking straight at him or looking down a little bit. And I'm like, okay, this kid looks kind of like a freshman. Then I go to talk to him at 7-on-7. I'm like, why am I angling my neck up to look at this dude? So yeah, Quinn Murphy has grown. Just everyone else on that team, very solid. I'm drawing blanks on names. Jackson Smith's younger brother, Blake Smith. Yeah, Blake Smith. Well, I've spoken at length how much he impressed me. Walker, I'm going to rely on you again. The really, really tall kid that's the younger brother of Powell.
Hudson Powell. I just picked it up. Anyways, he really stood out to me. He's going to be a dog for them this year. And Austin Regions, I mean, they look talented as ever. I think on the other side, having Jacob Wilburn. Yeah. Jacob Wilburn on the other side leading the defense, starting since he was a freshman. I mean, they have guys that are going to be such talented athletes on both sides of the ball, and they might be the favorites coming out of the South this year. It's gonna be a very interesting squad, and we can talk about it a little bit. Quinn Murphy might be the next best quarterback out of private school, and since probably Preston Stone or Sawyer Anderson or just guys like that, Keldon Ryan, where he could go true Power 5 dude and be really, really impressive. And he's only going to go up from there. And I don't know where, Austin Regions get these guys from the ground up and they just grow them over there. But man, they get lucky with their quarterbacks. That's the third in line of true, really, really good quarterbacks there at Austin Regions, man.
I think they're just planting them like carrots, like when they're like 6 or 7 years old, and then like Phillips just kind of like lets them grow for about 5 years, and just kind of like goes to the farm, looks, just like pulls one up, like, yeah, you'll do, and just throws them into the
But like
offense.
because like they're not transferring in. Like they
No.
grew up there. Like they grew up at Austin Regions and they just breed quarterbacks over there. You gotta respect it, man. You got to.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, I'm not talking down on transfers at all. I've made it very
No,
clear.
yeah.
I've made it very clear that that's part of the game now. I think you have to plan for that. But I think it's really, really special. Like when you home grow talent like that and you're just so consistently good. I'm a broken record. It's cliche as all get out at this point. I talk about culture so much, but you are hard pressed to find a better one in the state than Austin Regions. It's just really impressive to watch. But
And they got some swagger to them. It was so cool watching them at Tap 7-on-7. Like, every other team, they're going through the motions. They bring out the speaker while they're walking through the whole everyone else. And I'm like, they got some swagger down there in Austin. It's awesome. I know, I picked against them a couple times and they're not the biggest fans of me, but I'm a big fan of them and their program. And, started with Bryden over there for a decade plus, and Coach Phillips over there now is doing a really good job of continuing that success. So I'm excited for this team, man. Really am.
absolutely. So that actually allows us to transfer into our storylines pretty seamlessly. My first question is, does anyone sniff Regents in this district?
No.
Hmm.
I know that's not good podcast like discussion, but no, I think Hyde Park is a really good squad. And I think Brownsville has a couple really good guys of Cristiano and Torres, and the other guy, the offensive lineman, I gotta give my O lineman a love a little bit. Diego De La Cruz, a 6'4" offensive lineman. He's gonna be really, really good out there. And he's gonna be a guy to one to watch for the next couple of years. He's gonna be a junior too. Like,
Would
they
he
have
be willing to relocate to East Texas, specifically Tyler, off the loop?
I think he'd much more rather want to go live in Fort Worth, Texas, and go to a school down there called Southwest Christian.
We're gonna get into the high school NIL game. We're gonna start just like auctioning for players.
Don't say that. You can't say that because like that we're immediate. You can't be doing that because maybe we'll be like, oh,
Satire. So I want a big warning on the screen that says satire.
Oh my goodness. But no, I think St. Joe's has a couple guys that are going to be really, really good, and I think that battle, like a sneaky, really good matchup, is going to be Hyde Park versus St. Joseph. In that for that kind of second place spot, and I would love to know, who's playing
Quarterback.
No, where is that game going to be played this year? And I think one second.
While you're looking that up, I will raise a question.
Go for it.
I think St. Joe's has a lot of talented prospects. The question I have with them is who's playing quarterback. That's a big question. Looking through their list, they have 226s. They've got Gavin Cicernos and then Sebastian Solis Castillo. And those are just names. I don't know anything about them at this point. And yet again, it's two sophomore kids that we're presuming are in a battle for quarterback unless they transfer an athlete there. So they have fantastic wide receivers in Cristiano and then Torres. But the question on my end is who's giving them the ball, which I think they'll figure that out. But it's a minor question right now. I have preseason.
For sure. And that game is going to be at Hyde Park. So that's going to be a big favor for Hyde Park in that game, of course. And because Brownsville, that drive to Brownsville it's kind of like the drive down to, the going to the Midland. It's the opposite side of the world where you go to the bottom part of Texas. So it's going to be interesting to see how Brownsville, which I mean, they kind of deal with that already with all the driving they probably have to do. So they're used to it. So they have a couple guys, but I definitely think losing Ethan Gallegos, I have to say that correctly. Ethan Gallegos because he was a transfer guy too. coming in this past year, playing quarterback and then going to college. If they can find another guy, that would be huge for Brownsville St. Joseph, a guy who maybe is proven in that area.
I just realized all of last year we called him Galagos, didn't we?
Oh yeah.
How did you figure? Did somebody tell you that, or did you just now realize we need to do that?
Well, I was watching something, and it was the same last name, and they said it Gallegos, and I went, "Oh, that's definitely supposedly how you're supposed to say that." And I was like, "Oh, dang!" And it was after we recorded the award show and everything, and I went, "All right, well, nothing we can do about it." But I know how to pronounce his name now, probably.
Because I'm guessing you had like 6 years of Spanish in school too,
Right, yeah.
Like, yeah, like there's no excuse for us not to know that a double L in a Hispanic name is a Y sound. Well, I have an excuse. I'm a hick kid from East Texas. I can claim that. You're from cultured DFW. You have no excuse.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely DFW makes way more sense for that. You see, I took Chinese my last couple of years in high school.
What?
Yeah. Ni hao mao.
Why?
Ni jiao sheng mingzi. Like I know a little Chinese in me, but I mean that's means what is your name? That's actually what it is. Will Shihuan TXP's podcast. What? Well, Shihuan means I like. I like. Shihuan means like to like, and woe is I.
I refuse to let this derail us more than it already has. But why did you take Chinese in high school?
Because it was easier for me personally, and also like it was just more fun, and I enjoyed it. And it's the world. It's gonna be the world's language, man. I don't know, but it was easier in high school for me. So
I'm gonna try to find a path to softly land us from that conversation. That might be the best rabbit trail that we've taken ever in the history of TXPS. But Walker Lott is conversationally fluent in Chinese.
not much. I've lost a lot. I tried to go back on Duolingo the other year, and I was trying to like remember like whatever. So like I remember small stuff, but like yeah, like I don't remember a lot of things. But like I can listen to like if I was watching one movie, and if I really pay attention, I can hear words that I can remember, but I can't remember like full sentences that they say.
Okay, that's awesome. I highly respect that. You are now excused for not pronouncing Gallegos correctly. I fully endorse that. But that being said, moving on down our list of storylines in District 3. Part of the big reason that I have Hyde Park second is because of how good Carter Braw is. And I know that's not really great. That's not great practice to do that off of one player. And I'm not doing it off of one player. There's some other guys I want to mention. But Braw is going to be very good. Walker, you were one of the first people to mention how good of a prospect he looked. He's going to be a senior, 6'5", 225, moves incredibly well for his size. I mean, he's going to be incredibly talented, and I think he can help lead them to a second place spot. Also, their new quarterback, Jacob Van Ryan, looks very talented. 6'2", 170, going to be a junior this season. I'm having to do the math now because 25s have always been sophomores in my mind, so I'm going to have to get used to saying that. But I think between Van Ryan, Carter Braw, guys like Quay Jackson, Rip Whitley, Trip Riley, I think that Hyde Park has a really good chance to take another step forward from a third-place finish last year and turn that into a second-place finish. Walker, do you think that makes sense?
Oh, 100%. And I think they have a couple guys, and I want to say shout out to Coach Dawson. We finally got to meet him at the TAP 7-on-7 tournament, and got to meet him, and he said you're always welcome down there in Austin for him. And their team was really, really cool, man. They're really good guys, and I'm a big fan of Carter Braw. I think he'll be a good tight end where if he needs to put his hand in the dirt and block, he can do that definitely, and also catch the ball too. And Quay Jackson, Trip Riley looks pretty good, and new transfer Reverson Shaw, I think from the Hill Valley. But yeah, Jacob Van Ryn is going to be a kid that I'm excited to watch, and he was throwing the ball really well at the TAP 7-on-7 event. So I think they have a couple of guys, and I think they can solidify that second spot. Which what a turnaround with under Phil Dawson at the head coaching position for Austin Hyde Park, and I think they can come back to the Hyde Park of old because supposedly I was talking to a guy down from the Austin area, and he was like, yeah, like they used to be like really, really good. And so I think Hyde Park can definitely get back to that over years after years. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. I do think that the last thing I want to hit on before we move out of District 3 is I genuinely think, and I don't know if it's a hot take or not with how much talent there is in District 3, I think there's a strong possibility that senior Amon Gardner is going to be the best skill player from TMI in this district. Not the best skill player from TMI, the best skill player period in this district. If you haven't, look up his huddle film. It's one of the more fun tapes I've gotten the chance to watch. He's super solid. I don't know if TMI has enough talent outside of him to make a run at like a second or third place spot. I don't think they do personally, but Armand Gardner in a vacuum is just electric. I really want to see TMI find more ways to get him the ball this season. Just let him run loose. I think it's going to be a really, really good time. And I think he's a player that has to get the ball in his hands and someone that could be a dark horse for like district offensive player of the year. I think either Quinn Murphy or Jacob Wilburn will have district MVP locked up just because Regents is going to win that district. And usually the winners of the district are going to get that spot. But I do think he's somebody that could be a dark horse for like first team all state, somewhere around that. But Walker, before we move out of District 3, is there anything else you want to hit on?
No, I'm excited for this district, man. I think it's good. I'm really excited to see how St. Michael's does because new head coach, new a lot of positions, and they get a lot of transfers out, and it's going to be interesting to see how does St. Michael's deal with a lot of turmoil in the past year in the off season and going into this year. And they've always been awesome to us, and Coach Scales down there is a great dude, so I'm excited for rooting for St. Michael's this year.
Absolutely. As long as Scales is at St. Michael's, I'm a St. Michael's fan for sure. Absolutely wonderful man. But moving on into our fourth and final district in Division 2, we moved down to Houston to preview this. And without further ado, we will get into the power rankings of TAPS Division 2 District 4. At number 1, this has been a large question for a lot of people moving into the season. We have the Houston Second Baptist Eagles. At number 2, we have the Fort Bend Christian Academy Eagles. At number 3, we have the Woodland Christian Academy. At number 4, we have Lutheran South. At number 5, we have Beaumont Kelly. And at 6, we have St. John's. So, Walker, this is kind of a situation like District 1 where we've gone back and forth on who gets the first spot. I will say, personally, it's still tight, but I think it's a little bit more clear-cut than District 1, who's the number 1 spot. We gave that to Second Baptist. What was our rationale in doing so?
I think kind of like we did for District 2, where roster turnover was a huge thing. And I think having the guys that are returned for Second Baptist is huge. I think having, they lose Kyle Cole Morgan, which was a huge loss for them, of course, but they return Turner Murdoch, JD Crisp, and Cannon Toon, Bryce Butler, and others that I'm just blanking on the top of my head. But Charlie Shears is a big one. Chase Tepper, the offensive lineman, other guys like that, Jackson Powers. And, they return a lot. I know it's under a first year head coach and Beck Bryden, but, Beck Bryden is one of the most well-respected of one of the, Mount Rushmore type of guys for private school football. And you probably return the best athlete in all of that district in JD Crisp. And I think that's going to be a lot where some guys, just having a couple guys on your team will just set you apart. And I think having guys like JD Crisp, Shears, Murdoch, I think will set them apart. And on the other side, of course, Fort Bend, they lose a lot. And they lose, a lot of their guys on the receiving core. And they lose probably one of their best players in school history in Brady Dever, just being real. And one of the best quarterbacks they've ever had, one of the best quarterbacks in Houston, 100-plus touchdowns or whatever the record was for him over time. James Donovan, they lose Connor Tallis on the defensive side, who had 200-plus tackles. So they have to replace a lot. And, it's not like they're short of talent because they probably have the most in all of those division, and the whole division probably have one of the 2-3 most talented guys in Bennett Warren, Max Granville. And those twos are going to be going to play Power 5 ball as when their careers are done in high school. Bennett, dropped the top four, including Michigan, A&M, and Tennessee. And, guys like that, don't come across often in private schools. So having guys like that in Granville probably will be DPOY at the end of the year, just of how good he's going to be. But they have a lot of questions going into the year. Who's going to be their quarterback? Who's going to be the starter? Who else besides Tyler Curry are they going to have at the receiver position? Running back, they have Jordan coming in from Richmond Foster. And then on the other side, they have a lot of positions that need to be replaced, especially in defensive back. And you lose Kobe Sellers, which is a huge, huge loss that can't be understated. But they have a couple guys, defensive line, they're going to be set with Granville and Jimmy Ducksworth, who, we love here at the program. But they have a lot of questions and a lot of transfers, and can they gel quick enough to where if they play Second Baptist, which they have them at home, luckily, are they going to be gelled and ready enough to be and compete with those guys? And that's going to be interesting to watch.
I completely agree. And you mentioned it. One of my big questions for Fort Bend is, as long as I've covered them doing this podcast, they have always been able to out-talent their opponents at the receiver position specifically, with guys like Marcus Creaton, Brian Domino, Braylon Gardoni. They've just had, and not just one or two guys, they've had 3 or 4 guys that are just like, you get them the ball, they go, and they're far and away better than the DBs they're playing. This year, and again, I'm a huge Tyler Curry fan. I think things he did as a sophomore, especially in that state semifinal game, he's a very good player. I don't know who they have besides that. And I think it's going to be a big factor. And also, it doesn't help and kind of compounds the issue that we don't quite know who they have at quarterback. It's a question mark for sure. Now, obviously, you have generational private school talents, Max Granville and Bennett Warren. Can those guys win you the games that you need to win? Yeah, they're obviously going to be able to beat you, TWCA, Lutheran South, Kelly, and St. John's, but that's not what Fort Bend is interested in. They're interested in beating Second Baptist. I know that they got them back in the playoffs and they won the game that mattered and got to the state championship. I know that Coach Black and everyone else coming back is still a little pissed off about how they kind of got emasculated in the regular season last year. And yeah, they excised some of those demons in the playoffs, but they're going to want to do that again this year.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting, man. I mean, on paper right now, I'm going to say Second Baptist is the better team. Thankfully, the game isn't played on paper. I think there's a lot of emotional baggage, pent up rage and things like that that's going to play a part when we come to that matchup in the season. And it's funny, I'm previewing a game that we're not going to see for like 3-4 months now, but I'm going to be ready for it. And with a guy, first of all, Beck Bryden is a great coach, and with a guy like Jordan Black at the helm and just being around him and seeing his work as a motivator and being somehow a great tactical coach and a player's coach, I'm never going to say Fort Bend's going to be out of it, but right now we have to put Second Baptist at the first spot. I just, like you already mentioned, I'm not going to go rehash the whole preview, but JD Crisp, I think, is a candidate for the MVP of this district.
I want to also mention they lose their offensive coordinator, I believe, right? Their offensive coordinator at Fort Bend, I think, leaves, and they get replaced by a guy who's supposedly one of the very, very smart-minded offensive coordinator. And I met him down there, and I forgot his name, and I apologize to you, man. But everyone I talked to about him has high praise and knows offense like the back of his hand. And so I think having him in that spot will be really, really good to kind of mentor these young quarterbacks. And it's going to be Jack Malone or Kane Colo at the quarterback spot. It's going to be interesting to see who wins that job. But they have a couple guys on the defensive line, Jacob Bjornold, guys like that, and it's going to be interesting to see how they do. Jordan Rogers also at the safety spot. It's going to be a huge help to a lot of these younger guys who haven't been there for a while and are getting used to the program. Having Jordan Rogers back there will be huge for them. So I think they have a lot of tools, and like, I'm adding this game, the Second Baptist Fort Bend game, to I'll be there no matter what games. And I will be making a graphic of those games in private school this year. And that's definitely on the list because that game is going to be so much fun. Because at Fort Bend this year, too, it's going to be a good one.
I completely agree. It's going to be a fantastic time for sure. But transitioning into our 3 and 4 spots, another storyline I want to bring up. Does the Woodlands Christian and Lutheran South have anything in their tank to challenge the top dogs? Walker, do you think those guys have a shot at catching Fort Bend or Second Baptist napping this year?
I don't know about LSA, but I think the Woodlands could shock. I'm not saying I if I don't let me see who you look this up for me while I'm talking. Who does Woodlands Christian have at home? Um because Grayson Boker is a guy that, just got offered by Baylor and Liberty in the offseason and I think he's going to be one of the best linebacking prospects in all of Houston, the great area. And he's a dude, man. He is a dude. And Gunnar Auckland and Bo Ellis, guys like that, are going to be huge pieces for this team. And I really like Jonathan Vidal. I think he was a good player, and I think they have pieces. Cameron Leslie, I believe, is the guy, or no, Tyler Seeger might be the guy. Yeah, Tyler Seeger is the guy who's 6'6", 215 as a 2025. And he is going to be a guy that could be a Division I talent one day. And I think having all of these guys, they lose a talented senior class led by Josh Johnson, but all these guys have potential to, hey, if they have a couple teams at home, they could have it, make it interesting.
And to make it even more interesting, they do have those couple teams at home. They got Fort Bend and Second Baptist both at home. So we will see. I think there's not as steep of a talent drop off as there is in District 1 with Liberty and All Saints and everyone else, but I think there's a drop off after Fort Bend. I don't think it's nearly as steep. I think, like you said, I think especially with Fort Bend and Second Baptist, TWCA getting them at home, I think we might see something. And like you said, I'm very big on Grayson Boker, Gunnar Oakland, and everyone else they have. I think it'll be interesting. I think that TWCA certainly has enough talent to compete, and from the things that we've heard from the people inside of the program, they're dark horses to watch this year, certainly. But that being said, talking about some losses, yeah, like you mentioned, Walker, losing Marcus Cantu at LSA hurts a lot. It's probably a decision that's best for his career, being a Texas baseball commit. But I mean, that being said, he was a very good quarterback for them. Now, LSA still has guys like Wesley Willingham, who I am a big fan of, not only in his name, but also I mentioned this before we started recording. He's a very talented overall running back. He's a guy you get the ball and you can run him like 30 times a game and be fine off of that. But I do think there's a step down after TWCA when you get to Lutheran South. But yeah, I mean, Walker, that obviously hurts them a lot.
No, yeah, I think LSA is going to be an interesting one. Cantu is a great quarterback, and it definitely makes sense if he wants to focus on baseball. But Matthew Furness, Wesley Willingham over there at Lutheran South are going to be good players. Jalen Best, and I really am excited to see this 2026 defensive back Braden Robinson. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about him, and from other coaches and stuff like that, and I'm excited to see him play. And hopefully, I can make it down to a Lutheran South game this year because I'm very, very intrigued to see how he does this year. And I think, Lutheran South has always made people was always fighting and have that kind of gritty games here and there. Just they couldn't get over the hump in a lot of games. But they have pieces that could maybe shock some teams if they do the right things. And yeah, Katie St. John's and Beaumont Kelly. It's just gonna be interesting. Beaumont loses a lot. And I will say it would be such a more interesting district if you had the quarterback that was there at Beaumont Kelly, Roy Thomas Jenkins, if he was still there, I know he went over to whatever Beaumont Westbrook, but if he was still there, that would be, I mean, he would be the best quarterback in that district probably now. But it just, talking about that type of things, like it'd just be fun and interesting to see how Beaumont Kelly, if guys like him and the rest of his guys didn't transfer out, how it have been. But it looks like, they have a guy coming in from Beaumont Westbrook and Quincy Derry, who's going to be a 5'9", 170-pound player, and maybe he could cause some damage. Beaumont Westbrook is one of the powerhouse talent in the Golden Triangle, so it's going to be interesting to see how Beaumont Kelly does. But yeah, best of luck to Mike Long over there, the head coach, and seeing how he does over there.
Absolutely. So that being said, that's really all of the storylines that I wanted to hit in District 4. Wrapping that up, I think Second Baptist and Fort Bend, obviously there's a lot of top end talent, but I think between TWCA and Lutheran South, I think there's a couple teams that could make things interesting and catch one of the Giants sleeping if the opportunity provides itself. But that being said, that actually closes out not only the District 4 preview, but all of the previews for TAPS Division 2. So I could say we're ending the episode there, but we are not. We decided to power rank the teams in district or division 2. Switching between saying division and district is breaking my brain. It's just a coin flip whether I said the right thing at this point. But long story short, we power rank the top 10 teams coming into the season, in our opinion, in Division 2. So let's just get into it. At number 1, surprise, surprise, we have Argyle Liberty Christian. Number 2, Fort Worth All Saints, followed by Austin Regents at 3, Second Baptist at number 4, Fort Bend Christian at number 5, Midland Christian at 6, Hyde Park, the Woodlands Christian Academy at 7, Hyde Park at 8, the Grace Community Cougars at number 9, and then Lutheran South at 10. So, Walker, we've spoken at all these teams at length. Just regarding some quick thoughts on our power rankings, what are your thoughts? Yet again, what's the rationale behind putting these teams where they are?
Yeah, I think 1 and 2 makes sense. 3 is definitely probably the favorite in the South right now, with Second Baptist and Fort Bend right behind them, competing for that first spot. And then everyone 6 down is going to be interesting to me. Midland Christian, is a good squad, and they'll probably be that third. We have them third place in that District 1, and only one team from District 2 in Grace Community. And besides Austin Regents in Hyde Park, that's the only 2 teams in District 3. So that'll be interesting to watch. You could see a team like Brownsville St. Joseph sneak in there, or maybe like a Frisco Legacy sneak in there. But I think I like our top 10 right now.
I agree with that. And I will say I can just see the writing on the wall because it happened last year. I think Grace is going to start the season 5-0 against Winona, Wills Point, Brook Hill, Lone Oak, and Spring Hill, against 4 bad public schools, and then a decent D3 team in Brook Hill. They might get overrated a little bit, and then eventually, I don't know. We'll see. I'm trying to protect my feelings from getting too inflated as the year goes on. I'm a homer at heart. I can't help it. I paid Walker $5 before the episode started and said, if we can just get Grace in the top 10, I'll do it. No, Grace does deserve to be in there. I think they're a solid team. And in terms of the overall rankings, yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to argue the way that we have it laid out. I think the biggest arguments you can make is Liberty versus All Saints 1 or 2. And I think there's going to be a lot of Regents fans that are upset that they're not ranked number 1. I think they are nothing if not confident in their own abilities. That's not a slam at all. I love the swagger out of Austin. Well, we'll see. I think they're incredibly talented, but at the end of the day, you can't look me dead in the face at the rosters that Liberty and All Saints have amassed and say anyone in the state should be number 1 right now on paper. Again, I'm stressing on paper. We haven't seen any of these teams play real games yet. Football is not played on paper. We don't make little origami shapes and do little paper field goal football. This is real games. We will adjust as necessary once we start playing games, but this is what we're here for, is speculate, to make comments about who's going where, and to give you all some things to enjoy before moving into the season. So Walker, that all being said, we have exhausted the content that we had on paper for this episode. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with before we get out of here?
No, I think that's really it. This is 2 divisions down. We'll move into doing 3 and 4 next week, and SBC after that. So stay tuned for those. And I think we already did all our housekeeping, so there's not much to say. So yeah, thank you all for watching. If you continued all the way here, but yeah, I'm excited, man. We're getting slowly more and more closer to football, and that's always a good time.
I agree. It's very exciting. And I promise this year we're doing D3, D4 in the SBC schools. We're not stopping with D2. We planned this out a little better than last year. We got kind of crunched for time, but this year it will happen. We'll get it done, and every division in private school that we cover will get a preview. But all that being said, as always, I have been one half of your hosting crew, Wes Tolleson, joining you from Sunnyvale, Texas. Walker Lott has fantastically been himself in College Station. We will see you in the next episode in the D3 and D4 preview. See you later.
3, 2, 1.